Minecraft 1.20 is adding new armor trims into the game. However, this way of decorating your armor is actually very complicated, but no worries, because in this Minecraft armor trims guide, I'll explain everything about it. Now, the smithing table was added in Minecraft 1.14, however, that has been changed. Let's say we have a chainmail chest plate. If we want to add an armor trim to this, we first need to find a smithing template. Now, smithing templates can be found all around the Minecraft world, mainly in structures, and I'll go into how to find each one a little bit later on. Now, each of the smithing templates, you can also get more of them with a crafting recipe similar to the smithing template upgrade, and that is to have 7 diamonds plus the smithing template and a corresponding piece of stone, which will give you more of those. And of course, by doing this, we can get a bunch of this Dune template, for example. Now, these are a bit different. We place in a smithing template, we place in whatever piece of armor we want. We cannot do this with tools, but with the armor trims, we then put that in there with whatever piece of armor we want of any type, and also something to trim it with. Now, there's 11 different materials you can use, and I'll go into all of them later, but for example, we could use diamond, or we could use redstone. We may as well use redstone with this one, and it consumes that armor trim template. It also, of course, converts that chest plate into the trim type, and whatever material we put in there for the trim type to be. So right here now we have a chest plate which has that beautiful red trim on it, and as you can see there's a specific pattern to that. There are 11 different smithing templates. Each one of them gives you completely unique patterns on each piece of armor. So for example, we could have here that exact same Dune template be applied to a helmet or leggings or boots, and we may as well do that. So we'll just place the template in here plus redstone plus the things we're going to upgrade, and you can see that there's interesting patterns for each one of these, but these patterns would be different if we had a different smithing template. Like, let's say instead of the Dune armor trim template, maybe if we had the wild template. And now you can see all of our chainmail armor looks really cool. Now that is the primary basics of the armor trims, but let's go into advanced uses and all the info you need to know about them in this ultimate guide, because they are very complicated. We're going to start off with how to get every single armor trim template. As you can see, there are 11 different templates in the game, and they are found all across the entire Minecraft world. First, there is the Spire armor trim, which can be found inside of end cities. And while you're here in the end, be sure to grab a couple purple blocks, because to get more of the Spire armor trim, you need 7 diamonds, the Spire armor trim, as well as a purple block to then get a very large supply of these. If you want to get the eye armor trim, head to Stronghold Libraries. And inside of those chests, you can find this smithing template. Now, if you want more of this template, you actually have to go to the end dimension. 1 end stone plus the eye armor trim, and then of course your 7 diamonds are going to duplicate that, and then you can get yourself more that way. If you want to find the Snout armor trim, which should not be mistaken with the Snout banner pattern, simply look inside Bastion remnant chests, and there is a rare chance to find that Snout armor trim. If you want to get more of the Snout armor trim, then you have 1 black stone, 1 Snout armor trim, and 7 diamonds. That will duplicate that for you, of course costing 7 diamonds and 1 black stone. The rib armor trim. This is found inside the Nether Fortress, inside of Nether Fortress chests. And here we have one right here. If you want to get more of the rib armor trim, it's fairly easy. All you need to do is surround that fully inside of diamonds, and of course also have in it a piece of netherrack, which is sort of like the nether stone. And so then with that we can duplicate the rib armor trim to get as many of those as you want. The Vex armor trim. I think it's fairly obvious where you get this armor trim. That is inside the Woodland Mansion. But if you do find one of the rare loot chests here inside of it, there can be the Vex armor trim. Now if you want to get more of this Vex armor trim template, then just put this with cobblestone and 7 diamonds, and that will give you more of them. If you want to get the Ward armor trim inside of Minecraft, you have to travel to the ancient cities and look inside the chest there for a very small chance of finding this armor trim. Now if you want to get more of this armor trim, what you need to do is place down a crafting table, put in there cobbled deep slate as well as the Ward armor trim and 7 diamonds, and this way you can duplicate that Ward armor trim to get more and more of them. If you want to get the Tide armor trim, head to a ocean monument and defeat the Elder Guardian. Now the Elder Guardian will not always drop this armor trim, so you may have to fight quite a few to get it. And this Elder Guardian just dropped for us the smithing template of the tied armor trim. If you want to get more of the tied armor trim, then put that in the crafting grid with prismarine, surround it in 7 diamonds, and you can duplicate them that way. To find the wild armor trim, go into a jungle temple, and then after being careful in the jungle temple to not be killed by arrows that are in it, you can find in the chest there the wild armor trims. You can also find these in the secret chest of the jungle temple. And if you want to get more of this exact smithing template, the wild armor trim, simply put mossy cobblestone plus that trim and 7 diamonds inside of the crafting grid. That will give you more of them. If you want to find the coast armor trim, no better place to look than the shipwreck. If we go inside the shipwreck and look in the chest here, we have here the coast armor trim. Just use boring old cobblestone plus 7 diamonds and a coast armor trim. You can copy these to get more and more of this interesting coast armor trim item. If you want to get the Dune armor trim, head over to a desert temple. Then of course dig down safely to the area of the temple that contains the chests. If we look inside these chests, there's a chance to find the Dune armor trim. And if you want to get more of this armor trim, then put those plus sandstone inside the crafting grid, and of course also surround it in diamonds. And for the final Sentry armor trim, to get this you need to find a pillager outpost, but preferably one that doesn't have too many pillagers in it. Go up to the very top where there's always one chest, and in there we have a chance of finding the Sentry armor trim. If you want to get more of this armor trim, then use a crafting table, cobblestone, and of course that one Sentry armor trim, surround it in 7 diamonds, and that will give you more of them. Now that we've collected all 11 armor trims, what do these actually look like? There are 10 different materials that armor can be trimmed with, and there are 11 specific armor trim patterns that are of course found in the places that I just mentioned earlier. So for these materials we have quartz, diamond, netherite ingot, as well as the amethyst crystal here, the emerald iron ingot, redstone dust, copper ingot, gold ingot, and lapis. You can see here this is what the amethyst trim looks like. This is what the emerald one does. This is the copper armor trim. This trim here, although it looks rather brown, is actually the gold armor trim, as well as this one right here being the gold armor trim. So you can see there is definitely some color variation depending on the pattern being used. This right here is the quartz armor trim, and you can see it is very light, but there is a bit of gray on there. The netherite one does look very much like netherite, and I'd say one of my favorites is actually the redstone one, just because it's such a bright and vibrant color. The lapis lazuli one also sort of has the colors of lapis, although there's some very light blue notes in here that you wouldn't probably see in the standard lapis block or texture. Here's an example of the iron armor trim, and you can see what I mean with the iron looking rather similar to the quartz, but still there is a difference in the coloring. There's definitely a lot of variation depending on what we're using. Let's take a look at the patterns themselves. Right here we have the smithing template of the coast armor trim, and for the visuals of this, we sort of have these bands that go all the way around the armor, one of course on the leggings, the boots, the chest plate, as well as the helmet, and there's kind of this dip down in it there. Nothing too crazy, but still a nice trim. This right here is the Dune smithing template armor trim, and this one contains this sort of 4-pixel pattern, almost like a flower, that appears on the chest plate. The helmet has kind of a mohawk look to it, and then the leggings here, as you can see, sort of have these little kneecap looking things on them, which also has that sort of flower shape. And the boots on the front of them, but not the back, have kind of a little flare that goes upwards. The ward armor trim, which is the ancient city one, also just again has a very standard band going around the helmet, but the chest plate here has this strange pattern with sort of an O shape or a circle, and then 2 dots on either side, which I think is meant to look somewhat wardenish. The leggings here have 2 bands that link up around the top, and the boots again also just have a single line around them, but it's a bit lower placed than either of these 2 patterns. This is the Nether Fortress armor trim called the rib armor trim, and this one is very distinct, literally just having ribs on the side of the armor, and as I mentioned earlier, the colors on this trim do tend to be darker than the standard trim. This is the Pillager Outpost Sentry armor trim, and this one is also rather similar in its looks to the coast one, where we basically just have lines going around the armor, but the main difference here is not, let's say, on the helmet, but actually on the chest plate here. All this changes is there's just a trim that goes around the shoulder pieces. The actual main body of the chest plate is exactly the same. So if you want a very light looking color change to your armor, the Sentry armor trim is for you. Same with the leggings and with the boots here. Again, it seems like with most of these we just tend to have a circle circle that goes around there. The wild armor trim gives us, I guess, what's meant to look like a very wild looking texture. The helmet here is interesting because the line that goes around it is very low down, so sort of at the eye level of the player. Same with this one, again we have this line that goes around the shoulder piece and also the main body of that, and that's also rather low down. On the leggings here we have this really high up upper line here that actually goes to the very top of the leggings, and on the boots we have something similar also, with the trim here being almost at the very bottom of the boots, which I think definitely makes that be useful. And now for this armor trim here, it is very easy to see what it's meant to represent. That is the prismarine bricks. As you can see here, it has that kind of three-pronged texture there, and you can also see the actual shape of the armor is changed slightly, because if you notice here, instead of it just having one block lower on the chest plate here, there's actually a 2-block lower dip. So that kind of makes the entire shape of the armor also be slightly modified. Just like how on some of these trims you can notice the shape of this armor is also somewhat changed on the chest plates. This one is also super easy to see what's meant to represent, and that's because it's the Vex armor trim. At the core of it, the Vex armor trim are meant to resemble the garments of the Evoker, with the helmet having the kind of funny evil eyebrows that you see on Illagers as well, and of course also the Vexes. And on the back of this armor trim there is almost no decoration at all. Now this next armor trim, for good reason, is my favorite, as of course it is the eye trim, and the eye trim also has these sort of eyebrow looking textures on them. As you can see here, they're nowhere near as big as the Vex ones, but we still have these 2 pixels here that are kind of meant to represent that. On the actual chest plate though, that's where we see the eye texture, not really anywhere else. With this massive circle there, something tells me on every piece of armor I make from now on, I should probably put the eye texture on it. Definitely a very nice armor trim, with the leggings being a little bit less unique, but still also having some interesting texture lines on them. And the Spire armor trim isn't super unique, but the factor of it which is interesting is we have sort of this zigzag pattern on there, especially on the leggings there. You can see it goes up on the corners, then down, then upwards, then downwards, so kind of going back and forth like that. The same thing is true also on the trim that goes around the bottom of the boots here, and that of the chest plate. Finally, we have the Snout smithing template. If we look at the helmet here, this is probably one of my favorite helmet textures, as there's not just this line that goes across most of them, but we actually have these strange sort of orbs that are on the side here, maybe gems. This could look perfect for a crown, and now the chest plate isn't particularly piglin looking, but it still is interesting with these kind of large amounts of color on there, shoulder pads with lots of detail, and these separated little pixel sections there. But where you see the leggings, this is where we definitely get that pillager aesthetic. As you can see, just like the piglin brute, we have this massive buckle inside the texture, as well as these small little dots that go around here, almost looking like inset gems. And on the boots themselves, the trim is on the very bottom, lower than any of the other trims, and this could definitely be used to make it look like you sort of have some reinforcement on your shoes. So that is what all the armor trims look like in terms of the colors, but also in terms of the visuals. Of course we can again put these on any single type of armor we want, and in fact I'll trim this with the diamonds, as I didn't show off the diamond trims here before, although you definitely can put trims on something of their same type. You can notice here not only does the diamond trim look really awesome, and we also have these strange sort of angry looking eyebrows or maybe horns on our texture here. There's also of course the fact that you can see that trim much better, as there's a lot of it that would be over just blank pixels before. It is now going over that chainmail. Now the big question you might be wondering is, what are the actual uses of the armor trims? Since they are fully cosmetic, is there any practical reason to get these inside the game? And thankfully the answer is yes. In fact, I'm going to show you some awesome things you can do out of the armor trims. The first thing is to mark out enchantments on armor, as of course generally it's hard to see which enchantments are on which armor, especially if they're on an armor stand. So I'll show you a way we could do this. Let's say on our helmet we have fire protection, on the chest plate we also have fire protection, then we have blast protection on the leggings, and on the boots we're going to have feather falling 4. Then if we go over here to our armor trimming station, of course the smithing table, we could put with the Spire armor trim for example, but it doesn't really matter which one it is, a red trim on that fire protection armor, so of course the chest plate and the helmet. Then for the blast protection, we could put an emerald because it's green, sort of like creepers, and they of course what you would normally be exploded by. And then with the feather falling, we could put white to be light and fluffy like clouds. We put on all this armor, and our armor does look really awesome, but we also have this instant visual recognition that those two pieces of our armor are fire protection, the leggings are the blast protection, and the boots are of course the feather falling. And what displays them even better than just being on our actual player is if we have a ton of armor stands stands set up, each one with different enchantments, or we just want to remember which enchantments are on which armor. On our armor stand here, we can instantly recognize these are fire protection, that is blast protection, and that is feather falling. As you can see right here, for example, it can be very easy to blend in with other players, other things that have similar armor. For example, us looking like we're just one of the armor stands here. And so more or less what you can do to change this is of course also using the armor trims. So we're going to simply add this nice blue tint with the lapis lazuli to each piece of our armor, utilizing the ward armor trim. And we now have on our armor this very unique look to it. And of course we're all using the same color on each of these, but you can do a variety of different colors, having a different color for each piece. And as you can see now, we definitely do not blend in to the rest of this gold armor. And if you consider certain massive multiplayer scenarios in which there's tons of different players, all of them in their enchanted diamond or enchanted netherite, maybe each one having an elytra, then it could be very difficult to tell one player from another, but from now on that's going to be changed. So be sure to show off your unique look and style, and also maybe color favorites with the armor trims when you're playing multiplayer. Another incredibly good multiplayer use, or even single player if you want, is to make country or clan colors. That is, let's say if you have a group of different players, or maybe you're in a country that you've invented in your Minecraft world, you could have there be a certain color of armor trim, or maybe a certain pattern of armor that represents that you're part of that. This makes PvP really useful as well, because then you could have a bunch of different players, all being visually represented by the armor that they're wearing, belonging to each group, maybe even with certain trims representing different levels in that PvP community. So there's an insane number of combinations you can do with this as well, which definitely makes it useful for those kind of multiplayer scenarios, as now there's more than just banners to sort of show off the differences between different players. And it's actually crazy if you look at them all, the sheer number of armor trim variants that there are. So to start off, we have 10 materials and we have 11 different trims. There's also the fact that for every single piece of armor we have a different pattern. It's not the same pattern on all pieces, so we have to multiply that by 4 also to give us 440 different armor trims. But of course that forgets how many different types of armor there are, and with there being 6 types of armor, so that ends up being 6 times 4 times 10 times 11, which gives us 2,640 different armor trims that you can make. Definitely an insanely large amount of combinations, literally infinite if we count in leather. Now this is only possible with the iron ingot, gold ingot, diamond, and netherite ingot, and also of course iron, gold, diamond, and netherite armor variants, but you can actually put armor trims of the same color on armor. So for example, we could put on this right here an iron trim on our iron armor. We could then also put a gold trim on our gold armor, a diamond trim on our diamond armor, and a netherite trim on our netherite armor. It looks pretty nice. We have some nice detailing on there. And actually I'll put it on an armor stand here so we can see it even better. You can definitely make out the armor trims on all of these, although on let's say the netherite it's a bit harder to see. The other thing important to know is that leather armor can be trimmed. And you can see even though this is leather armor, we can still add trims to each piece of this. This is a fully customized piece of armor, but it is always a good idea to make sure to plan out your armor trims before you make them. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to see more Minecraft news, and turn on notifications to never miss a video like this in the future. I will see you in the next video, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Goodbye.